I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thanks so much for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring thought leaders in the career and personal growth arena. Now, I know that you spend a significant portion of your life at work, so I'm on a mission to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I'm very excited to have my special guest with me today. Tom Anderson is with me today. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Caroline. I really appreciate it. It's an honor.
You are so welcome, and I know that you braved a snowstorm to get here, so I appreciate that so very much. A spring snowstorm, there's nothing worse. Thank you for being flexible.
Absolutely. A little cold, but flexible.
Good for you. Good for you. Hey, let me tell our listening audience about you. Tom, you earned your MBA from the University of Chicago and a BSBA from Washington University in St. Louis. You worked in investment banking in New York before moving into private wealth management, and Tom received multiple national recognitions for his wealth management accomplishments, including being named 4 times to Barron's Magazine as one of America's top 1,200 advisors, state by state. His first book, The Value of Debt, is a New York Times and USA Today bestseller and was named the #2 business book in 2013 by wealthmanagement.com. And Tom is braving the snowstorm today, live from Chicago, Illinois, where he lives with his wife and 3 children, and he tells me an adorable puppy. So, Tom, I'm glad you're with me today. So, what I want to ask right off the bat, the book, The Value of Debt in Retirement, what prompted you to write this book?
Well, it's interesting when you actually look at all of those schools that you just went through, University of Chicago, Washington University is my undergraduate. I did my SEMA at Wharton, and I did a program at the London School of Economics. In all those studies, how many classes do you think I had on personal debt and debt structure?
I bet 0.
0 is exactly right,
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And so, after studying a lot of this and then working in investment banking, look, whatever room you're in right now, you could fill up with books and articles written on optimal corporate capital structures. Nobel Prizes have been awarded on this topic. All that I'm doing are taking ideas that are commonly used in corporate finance, making them more conservative and applying them to the individual.
What I love about this, Tom, and I should honor the entire title, it's why everything you've been told is wrong, the value of debt in retirement. So it does seem counterintuitive, right? Because the American philosophy for so long has been that debt-free should be one of our ultimate goals in retirement. So why this new concept?
First of all, it isn't my belief that all debt is good. We'll talk about the different types of debt. And it isn't my belief that everybody needs debt. But it is my belief that for many people, a strategic use of debt in a balanced, thoughtful, and holistic way can actually reduce your risk, which is very counterintuitive, but I mathematically prove it. Increase your rate of return, and actually minimize and potentially even eliminate your taxes. And I think those are pretty powerful things. I think people are worried about risk. I think they're worried about taxes, and I think they're worried if they have enough return in retirement. So debt can be a powerful tool to help you get to where you need to go.
What a lovely redefinition of debt, right? I bet a lot of people are breathing easier as they hear you say that. So you talk about the value of debt in retirement, but I think your book really has a broader audience. So to whom do you write this book? What is the target audience?
Well, that's a great question. So the first time the value of debt, when it came out, we realized it really kind of kicked a hornet's nest, that debt has just always been grouped into one category of bad. But is it not possible that debt could have some things in common with, dark chocolate and wine or
and red wine?
Yeah, exactly. Like a little bit being good, but a lot of it, or the wrong type of it, being bad. And so they followed up, my publisher's Wiley, actually with a 5-book deal. So this is the first one geared toward retirement. We'll have others toward, accumulation, divorce, small business, and taxes. But this one is generally geared for people that are, over 40 and maybe closer to 50, baby boomers that are finding themselves in a sandwich generation, having to maybe help out kids, help out their parents, make our limited resources go as far as they can to enjoy life, to your opening statement. And as we're getting closer to retirement, so many people are rushing in to pay down their mortgage, and I don't know that that intuitively makes a lot of sense. So that's what we spend a lot of time talking about.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. I think it's important to say as well that we don't think about retirement soon enough. Quite often people are stuck because they don't think of it until retirement is imminent. And are you of the mind that we really should be planning well in advance for our retirement years?
No doubt that you have to be planning well in advance. And so, what I talk about in the book are glide paths. And there's a difference. I mean, some people think, oh, do I have to spend a whole lot of time, planning? I actually don't think you need to spend that much. I think if you just get the right glide path where you're doing some discipline saving, be methodical and thoughtful about your debt, that you can get the right line to retirement, a trajectory.
So, Tom, speaking of trajectory, give me one great takeaway that you hope the reader gleans from reading your book.
That not all debt is necessarily bad would be the biggest one. That the right debt in the right way can be a good idea. That's the in particular, if you need a rate of return of more than 3% when you're in retirement. So let's say you have a $500,000 portfolio and you want more than $15,000 a year. I hope they take away the idea that rushing in to pay off their mortgage might not be a great idea for them.
So let's take that a step further then. What question should the reader ask to determine whether they're most likely to benefit from the strategies and practices of utilizing debt?
So, what happens first is you got to figure out, are you able to handle the responsibility associated with debt? Because a lot of people, like many things in life, it just can't handle it in a disciplined way. So this is not about buying stupid stuff that you can't afford. It's about better ways to pay for things that you already can afford.
Okay.
And so that's an essential grounding place that people have to start. I assume that you're going to be disciplined and rational and able to handle the power associated with these ideas. If you can, they're going to be awesome. If you can't, then they can lead to a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm. So fiscal responsibility is still essential.
Oh, yes, absolutely. You have to stay grounded as you're coming into a strategic debt philosophy. There's no doubt about it. The other thing you need to do is assess whether or not you need debt. And so when you think about that, that gets back to that glide path of goals. I mean, look, I think people kind of fall into three different categories. Some people, need a rate of return, as I was just saying, less than 3%. So let's say that you retired from a place and you've got a great pension and Social Security, and the income from pension and Social Security covers all of your needs. And maybe you already own your house outright. Well, that's great. Congratulations. You don't necessarily need a strategic debt philosophy. But if you need a rate of return between 3 and 6%, so to frame that back to that $500,000 example, if you want between $15,000 and $30,000 a year from your portfolio, then you're going to have to take a little bit of risk. And if you're facing some risk, I think you want to take the least risky path that you can. So we show you some better ways to get there. And if you need more than 6, you're definitely going to want to be thinking about the ideas in this book, because I have no idea how else you could get there.
There you go. But you will tell us in the book. So what kind of assets should one have in order to make debt work for them?
That's a great question. First of all, I believe so much in the power of liquidity. So you always want to make sure that you have enough liquid investable assets. I'll actually give you just a little bit more detail on that one. Imagine I gave you a $100,000 bonus and you took it and you paid it down on your house, right? Or you won a lottery ticket or something of that sort. What so many Americans forget in their incredible energy to rush to pay off their debt is that in many cases that's a one-way trip. If another 2008 comes along and you lose your job, you might not be able to pull that $100,000 back out of that house because you can't refinance it. You don't have a house. I mean, you don't have a job. So
yeah.
I think what you want to have is a very broadly diversified portfolio. I talk about some framework within that in the book, but more important, I really focus on liquidity and flexibility because that increases your survivability, and that's what I think listeners need to focus on.
Actually, you go into detail, Tom, in the book about calculating a debt-to-asset ratio. Do you want to tell us more?
Yeah, it's really quite simple. You just take your total debt and you divide it by your total assets. So, for example, If I had a $500,000 mortgage and I had $1.5 million of assets, then 500,000 divided by 1.5 million would be a 30% debt ratio. Now, when I say that, that's the simple way of looking at it. I take corporate debt ideas and make them more conservative for the individual. And I recommend that generally people keep their debt to asset ratio between 15 and 35%. What I find is that most people are either way, way, way above that level or they're way, way, way below that level. And the few that are within my optimal sweet spot happen to be there by luck and chance. And I don't think people should guess with their money.
Agreed. So 15 to 35% is optimal. What is bad or poor or inappropriate about going below that?
That's a great question. So I just had someone say this to me the other day, and they said, they happen to have a net worth between $500,000 and $1 million, and they had $50,000 outstanding on their mortgage, and it's at a relatively attractive rate. And they said, "Hey, do you think I should leave that in place?" And I said, "You know what? At that level, it doesn't really matter a lot, and you can kind of clean up the payment. So you're on such good shape and a good path. Go ahead and just clean that up. That's not going to be that big of a deal." So for these ideas to be powerful, I do have strategies for things like efficient ways to buy a car or fund a vacation or help your kids or an elder care bridge loan. And those are all great ways of having a debt ratio less than that you could use debt as just a short-term bridge for life situations. But generally, if you want a strategic debt philosophy, if it's less than 15%, it just is, the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
I like that. So what I'm hearing you say is rushing to pay off your mortgage could possibly, not be a good thing. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, I think that there are three types of debt, and one is, oppressive debt. And so that's going to be, payroll debt and credit card debt and things that has a rate north of 10%. If I've got credit card debt at 19%, you should pay that off because you get a guaranteed return of 19%.
Yeah.
But the next category is working debt, and that's the mortgage that you're talking about. If I've got a mortgage at 3, 4, or 5%, and my after-tax cost of that is, 2 or 3 or maybe 4, I don't know that I want to rush in and pay that off because there I'm getting if I keep that money, I have the liquidity, the flexibility, and the possibility that I could get a higher rate of return on that over time if I am in a broadly diversified portfolio. And I talk about that a little bit in the book.
Excellent. So it's tax season, right? So you talk in the book about debt strategy to lower your taxes. Give me a glimpse, Tom.
Yeah, so I think that in the last election, when Mitt Romney was speaking, we kind of learned two things, right? That one end, the very, very, very wealthy people aren't paying a lot in taxes by using a lot of tricks. And on the other side, Mitt Romney said 47% of America isn't paying federal income tax. And when he said that, it was controversial, but it was true. They're paying Social Security and Medicare taxes. How does the rest of America, right, the middle 50, use the same strategies that are being used on both sides? And I show how you can take out up to $80,000 a year from your IRA tax-free with the right strategy. I show actually scenarios how people have a $1 million, $2 million, $4 million, and $5 million net worths that all pay no taxes in retirement by using a thoughtful, balanced, and holistic strategy. Debt is very powerful. It's an interest that many times comes right off the top, not subject to AMT, bottom line deduction on your return. It's crazy.
It's crazy good. Absolutely. So, Tom, let me give you a scenario, right? Let's say I've got a listener who is in the 50 decade, right? They're somewhere in their 50s, but they haven't yet begun to save for retirement, right? We alluded to that a little bit earlier. What now? What do they need to do?
First of all, congratulations to whomever recognizes, to your earlier point, hey, this is coming up earlier than I thought, and I'm not on track for it. A lot of people are just ostriches with their head in the sand and not paying attention. So that's already a win. Number two, a lot of people find themselves in that exact circumstance. So what you need to do is, as you think forward to retirement, the goal is to build up as big of a pie as you can. So what you want to do is, we've all heard the saying, it takes money to make money. You want to be very cautious in paying down working debt, so things like your mortgage. You do want to eliminate your oppressive debt, anything that has a rate of return over 10%. You want to make sure that you're maximizing your retirement savings through things like your 401k. And you want to make sure that you're not taking a lot of risk within your portfolio. So often when people find out that they're not on track for retirement, they try to take risk by buying risky assets, right? Putting a whole bunch of stocks in their portfolio and taking crazy investment risks. The key is going to be consistent growth starting early to get you on that glide path over time. And we lay out some tables and charts on that can provide tools to help people do that.
Tom, I'd like to dive into the other end of the generational spectrum. What about our student loan debt, right? So many people, generations after they've earned those degrees, are still battling with student loans. And this can be a barrier for their financial future and certainly their retirement.
Yeah, it sure can. And, that's a top concern of many parents when they know that their kids are carrying a tremendous amount of debt. Student loans end up kind of coming into a couple categories. You have some that I would just put in that working debt category, where maybe you have a low rate, subsidized rate, 2, 3, or 4% over a long period of time. Then the child should be in a good place to gradually pay that off through the earnings on their career, and that can be a good loan for them to keep in place. But so often when they have that level of debt, it triggers another type of debt, or the child will get credit card debt, run those up. And, the other day I was talking to Johnson's and I said, what's going on? They said, my kid has $25,000 of credit card debt running at 20%.
Whoa.
Yeah, so they were thinking about paying it off, but they want to teach the kid a lesson.
Sure.
I provide strategies on how you could actually use your balance sheet to make a loan to your child that's still a loan, and the kid owes you the money. You're taking the risk about them paying you back, but they can clean up their credit, lower that rate, and together as a family, you can actually use your balance sheet in the most comprehensive way to help everybody be on a better track to hit their goals.
That's fantastic. So one more thing about an individual that might be in, let's call it a vicious, oppressive debt cycle, right? Lots of credit card debt, student loans. What's the first step to try to get them out of that spiral downwards?
So there again, one of the first steps is recognizing that you are in a problem situation and that you don't and that you're not on track. Obviously, the traditional advice, cutting back your expenses and getting on track. Sometimes people will say things like the cut them up and don't add to them are all good advices to have. In the rush to pay down debt, I definitely think it wants to be eliminated, but you have to realize that you need to make sure you have liquidity as well. So I think everybody should have a 3-month cash reserve first, just as oil in the tank, because crazy things happen to all of us. And when we have a lot of debt, we're actually at a greater risk of a shock. And the more that you rush in to pay some of that down, you can't always access it again. Once you build up your cash reserves, you then want to pay down all of that high interest debt as fast as you can. And then once you get it down to more reasonable debt, maybe you could restrike it against a home equity line of credit or try to use holistic views of lowering it. Then you move forward by building up more savings.
Tom, the book is full of excellent strategies, and what I appreciate is the user-friendly way in which you wrote it. You are clearly an expert, but you synthesize it in a way that is manageable for all of us. So I appreciate that very much. What a great, great resource.
That's very, very kind of you. Thank you.
So, Tom, let's get down to it. How do we buy the book? And I want to remind everybody of the title, Why Everything You Have Been Told Is Wrong, The Value of Debt in Retirement by Thomas J. Anderson, and it's a Wiley publication. How do we buy the book, Tom?
It's available at all the major online retailers. You can also find direct links to those on our website, which is valueofdebitinretirement.com. And, of course, you could follow me on Twitter at TomValueOfDebt.
Brilliant. Tom, I wish you great success with the new book, and I hope our professional paths cross again soon.
I can't wait. I sure hope so, and I look forward to talking to you shortly.
Be well. Thanks, Tom. And I want to thank you all for tuning into Your Working Life, where my goal is to help you design your career destiny so it doesn't happen by default. True career and life satisfaction is possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Take good care.